So we'll start with the last module or last unit of your turbo machines course, which is mainly on the power producing machines. One being the steam turbine, and the other one being the hydraulic turbines. So we don't have any thing included here. The gas turbines part is not included here. Maybe that can be taken in this other separate elective course where we have the gas turbines. Okay. So when you look at the particular syllabus, the first and the foremost thing what we are looking into in this particular chapter is the classification of steam turbines and the need for compounding and what are the different types of compounding, and we'll try to analyze the an impulse steam turbine as well as a reactions turbine, a single stage. As a preliminary step, we'll begin with a single stage turbines, and we'll have a couple of numericals on a multi-stage, that is two-stage turbines, where we have two sets of rotors. Maybe one or two numericals, we'll take it up and we'll try to do that. And then there is something called as reheat or something you have studied in your second unit, reheat factor or thermodynamic analysis of it. So those factors we look into them, and if possible, we will try to look into some of the performance curves, all those things, and condition for maximum efficiency, and what is the expression for the efficiency, all those things. Now, the moment we speak of steam turbines, if we speak of steam turbines, so what is the working substance here? The working substance is actually, it is the superheated steam. The superheated steam behaves as your ideal gas. Okay. And what will be the working pressure? Say always the steam turbine works under very high pressure and high temperature. So high pressure and high temperature. The moment I tell high pressure means how far it is, 10 bar or 20 bar, or what is it? For the moment if I tell high temperature, what is the corresponding temperature? To understand this, let's draw the HS diagram and try to write some of the points, and then we will proceed with the classification, all those things. So this is my HS diagram or the Mollier chart or whatever it may be, and I do have a dome. The dome is something like this, fine, and you have your critical isotherms, or your isotherms will be going like this. So isotherms will be going like this. It is straight there, it will be coming here, it will remain straight, and it will go. So these are your T is equal to constant. Those are called as isotherms, and you have a peak point. This is the critical point, and it has a critical pressure and a critical temperature. Fine. So if you look into your steam table, if you have a steam tables, if you look into that steam tables, so the value of the critical pressure will be roughly around 220 bar, and the temperature is around 374 degrees Celsius. These are my critical values. Then what will be the operating temperatures of most of the critical steam turbines? They will be operating at pressures around 350 bar, 400 bar, 450 bar, and the operating temperatures will be 800 degrees Celsius, 700 degrees Celsius, 900 degrees Celsius. Most of the steam turbines, high pressure steam turbines, are operating at above your critical value. So when these steam turbines are operating at very high critical values, the safety is very important. And the expansion of the steam, if there is any small leakage in that particular thing, it may be a disaster. So what we try to do, when this particular pressure, high pressure and high temperature steam, what we do actually in a steam turbine, we try to, the steam, see the steam, that is the superheated steam, is expanded. See, whenever the steam is allowed to rotate your blades, expanded through a set of rotors and stator. A set of rotor and stator to extract work. Okay, and they are all operating at above the critical point, above the critical point of your working substance, that is your pure substance is water, what we are taking. And see, as I told, leakage of steam, leakage is very, very critical. It's a very, very critical situation. So because of operating of this particular high pressure and high temperature steams, and also I do have large mass flow rates. See, large mass flow rates. That is, large quantities of steam is involved. So what we try to do? We try to majority of the type of the turbines we use is axial type of steam turbines. Fine. Very rarely we come across radial type. Very rarely we come across the radial type. Most of the steam turbines, see, they will be in terms of stages. So if I speak of any steam turbine, so you will be going for either a 3-stage or a 4-stage. If it is of 3 stages, the first stage is called as a high pressure stage, and the next 2 stages are called as a low pressure stages. If it is a 4-stage turbine, the first 2 stages are called as high pressure stages, and the last 2 stages are called as low pressure stages. So let me write that also. In a turbine, if a steam turbine, if it is as 4 stages, so it will have 2 high pressure stage and 2 low pressure stage. Fine. If it is made of, the construction is of 3 stages, so we will be having 1 high pressure stage and 2 low pressure stage. So this is how the construction looks like if I go for a steam turbine. It works on, see, what are the operating points? Look at this. The operating points will be somewhere here, this side, and all. You can see in an HS diagram when we try to solve the problem. So what usually in our TS diagram, if we try to look at from the boiler, it comes out at maybe near dry saturated, and then it is taken to a superheaters. Superheaters or superheating is done. So at the same pressure, at maybe around 400 bar or 500 bar, it is taken to a very high temperature of 800 degrees or so. Then it is expanded in a turbine. That's how the turbines work. Now, let us look at the classification or types of steam turbines or classifications. So, classification of steam turbines. So, major, it is classified into impulse and then the reaction, and the third one we have impulse and reaction combined. Impulse and reaction combined. See what happens in case of an impulse turbine. Already we know that the kinetic energy is absorbed in the rotor. If the kinetic energies are absorbed in the rotors, it is called as impulse machine. If kinetic energy and potential energy both are absorbed, so kinetic energy may be a small. If you look at it, if it is small, so if the potential energy is little bit bigger, is absorbed in the rotor, it is called as a reaction turbine. What happens in impulse and this thing here? Equal quantities of kinetic energy and potential energies are absorbed in the rotor. So we do have input type and this thing. So maybe let's look at an example. So for an impulse machine, we have an examples of an impulse machine. So we have the D-level turbine. D-level turbine. So it is in the name of the one of the an engineer. You can't call it as a scientist. It's an engineer who developed it. It's a Gustave D-level. So Gustave D-level. That name is irrelevant for us. But then we have the other one. So we have the Curtis impulse turbine. We have the Curtis turbine. So these are the two types of turbines. Still they are used actually. It was invented by or developed by an engineer by name Charles Curtis. Charles Curtis. Okay. Then we have the reaction turbine, a very famous reaction turbine, and we have what is called as a Parsons turbine, which is a 50% R. That is R is equal to 0.5. 50% degree of one of the very best or very known maybe steam turbine of reaction type is the Parsons turbine. And we have the an impulse and reaction both combined. Impulse and reaction combined. So we have what is called as Raichu turbine. So this is developed by one of an engineer by name Agustin Raichu. So classification wise, you don't need too much of classification, all those things are not. So just go by it. It is classified as impulse, reaction and impulse reaction and some examples. That's it. Okay. We know that you might have studied in your elements of mechanical engineering something about the compounding in steam turbines. The compounding in steam turbines. What is it actually? So if I take if I use a block, let me use a block. So this is a turbine. Okay, this is a turbine, and it enters at a very high pressure. Let me call that as 1, 1, 2, 2. This is a turbine. This is a turbine. It's an expansion type. Let me write the proper symbol. That's better. Right. This is a turbine. Okay. Enters at some pressure P1 and exits at some pressure P2. See, suppose if I assume that the operating pressure is very high, it is above your critical pressure. So P1 as well as my T1, this is P21, T2. So the corresponding density properties are there, density other properties are there. Fine. Now, suppose if it's operating at very high pressure bar, so maybe around, let's assume that it is 350 bar. See, on the downstream, so I do have a condenser here. See, I do have a condenser here. Fine. So this is my condenser, and the condenser will be operating at atmospheric pressure or slightly below your atmospheric pressure, and the temperature it can handle is slightly above your atmospheric, or where it can operate. Say if atmospheric temperature is around 25 degrees or 30 degrees, so this can operate some 40, 50, 40 degrees or something. So that is the entry temperature I'm looking at. So at the exit, it may be equal to your atmospheric temperature. Now, to drop from 350 bar to your, maybe this should be atmospheric, your P2 also should be atmospheric. If I am able to do it in a single stage, so the speed with which this particular thing will rotate is enormous, 1. So the reason we'll write, the pressure in the turbine is pressure in the turbine, steam turbine. It is not 350 bar. So usually series and threshold number, that is 30 bar or 40 bar, where your gas turbines are operating, it is greater than 40 bar. Let it be whatever it may be, 40 greater than 40 bar. That's one reason. And your condenser pressure, the condenser pressure, see, this pressure, no, this will be operating, see, the atmosphere we have, so but condenser will be operating at slightly lower than that. So your condenser pressure will be slightly lower than your atmospheric pressure. It can be 0.06 bar or 0.04 bar or 0.05 bar, depends upon the constructions. Okay. And also, what is the velocity with which the steam will be entering? See, the velocity is the operating velocities I'm looking at. They're all roughly around greater than around maybe 1200 to 2400 meters per second. So that is the speed with which they'll be operating. So under these conditions, the speed with which, that means your rotor will rotate at, rotor rotates at uncontrolled speed. Uncontrolled speed is without compounding. What is this compounding? Compounding nothing much. You are slowly, just like equal to loading, we call it as a loading in case of an IC engine. We try to load it or try to take the steam and try to expansion done in stages. So that means from one stage to next stage to other stage. So if the expansion is done in 2 to 3 to 4 stages, and that is called as a compounding. And so when we are doing it, actually in the stage, I will be having a set of intermediate rotors and all. Okay, what happens here actually? So the energy conversion, see, if it is compounding is not done, see, without compounding, what are the side effects? Without compounding, see, your nozzles, we have the nozzles where it expands to very high kinetic energy, expand to very high energy, because my velocity is increasing, so it is uncontrollable. This is one thing, it's very difficult if you compounding is not done. Second one, energy conversion. If it is done in single stage, then it is energy conversion is not efficient. The energy conversion is not efficient. That means I may be having huge losses. It can be any other losses, all the frictional or your hydraulic losses or mechanical losses and all. This will lead to a major thing, speed, that is very high controllable speed, that will lead to the high stress in the components, all the components, high stress in the components, And we may have, if you have studied your balancing of rotating masses, we may have balancing problems. Fine. Then design will become more complex because of the, so design will become more complex. Already the design is complex for a steam turbine. So when I have high stress means I have to go for higher materials or very high quality materials or good balancing is once again the problem. Then when the design cost increases, all this lead to what? The cost escalation. So if a steam turbine which was supposed to cost me around 30 crores, so I am putting a 500 megawatt plant, 30 crores. So if the cost escalates to 50 crores, so 20 crores I have to pay another 60% because of, since it's doing the work, but I'm paying more actually. So the design also is complex. The components used also maybe cost wise, maybe costly, and we do have balancing. All these things leads to what is called as compounding. Okay. When I speak of compounding, when I speak of compounding, so we do have, when I speak of compounding, the first thing that comes into your mind is the pressure compounding. The pressure compounding. Okay. What happens here? See, I've shown the pressure compounding here. You have a set of multiple rows of nozzles. See, these are the nozzles. These are the nozzles. Fine. Okay. And if you look at it, the pressure, how it is, see, this is my velocity. The fluid enters at, this is my velocity. It enters at some velocity, and this is my pressure. Fine. So what's happening here? The pressure will, see, the velocity, the fluid enters at some this thing. The velocity, this increases. It increases. Then in the rotor it expands. In the rotor it expands. Then in the nozzle it increases. Then it is dropping. Okay. Why it is called as pressure compounding? Look at this. What's happened to my pressure? See the pressure, it drops in my stator. Okay. Then in the rotor, if the pressure remains constant, see, in the rotor, the pressure is almost constant. There can be a slight drop in the pressure. See, that may be because of, maybe we can't have an 100% maintain an ideal condition. It's very difficult. So I may be having a slight drop, but the pressure almost remains constant. And what will happen to your velocity in the rotor? Rotor is increasing, but pressure, see, your velocity is increasing in the stator, but the pressure is dropping, but your pressure is almost constant. If the pressure remains constant in my moving a rotor and the velocity is getting, the kinetic energy is absorbed, we call such machines as pressure compounding. Okay, pressure compounding. You can see that to the right side also have the same thing. See, it all depends on the velocity. What is the velocity with which you are trying to? So you have the left side, I have the Raychu turbine, and I have the your Parsons turbine. Look at this, it enters at some velocity, it may be slightly increasing, then it is absorbed, then it goes. So one thing is common here. The the fluid enters at a particular velocity, and the entry velocity and exit velocity of your scheme may be same in case of a pressure compounding. Fine. But pressure, it enters at some pressure, then it drops uh, in my almost in the rotor. There can be a slight drop in the pressure. See, in case of your Parsons turbine, in place of a Parsons turbine, there can be a slight drop in the pressure. But actually, see, the compounding means actually pressure compounding means velocity, kinetic energy is absorbed in your rotor. The kinetic energy is absorbed. The pressure almost like pressure also, see, pressure, the how it is done, the pressure, how the particular pressure is dropped to or brought to its atmospheric condition or near atmospheric condition so that it can be sent to your condenser. Okay. If the expansion, see, if the, that means if the in the pressure compounding, if you want to write, if the expansion is shared in multiple rows of nozzles or stator rings, we call that as pressure compounding missions. Okay. Expansion takes place. Let me write that. If the expansion takes or expansion is shared, the expansion is shared in multiple rows of nozzles. So nozzles are stator vanes or stator rings, whatever it may be called. We call that as pressure component. Okay. Now the second one, the velocity component. Okay. Let's look at it. What's happening here? You have the velocity here. This is where your the fluid enters, steam enters. Then in the nozzle, the velocity is increased to a particular thing. Then in the rotor, the velocity gets observed. Then it remains same. See, it's not increasing in the previous pressure compounding. In the intermediate stator guide vanes or stator vanes, there was an increase in the velocity. But here what's happening? The velocity is almost remains same. Then the velocity is absorbed, kinetic energy is absorbed. Then the velocity remains same in my intermediate stator. Then it absorbs and it goes out. This is about your velocity. Then what happened to your pressure? See, the pressure expressive, the pressure, the drop takes place only in your nozzle to almost exit pressure. To almost its exit pressure, and then this remains almost remains constant. This is for your pressure. So this is for your velocity. This is your pressure, and this is your pressure of the steam at the end. So velocity component expansion takes place in one stator or a nozzle, and intermediate stator rings are just deflecting. If you want to be just deflecting, I can write if the expansion of the if the expansion takes place in the stator or nozzles. So in the nozzle, let me write it as nozzle, in the nozzle, and the intermediate stator rings, the intermediate stator rings are deflecting or just deflecting or deflecting the steam to the next stage. That means there is no increase in the kinetic energy. So we call this as the velocity component. So if both pressure and velocity component, if both pressure and velocity are combined together, that means I will be having for first couple of stages, one stage, say I have 4 stages, say 2 high pressure stages and 2 low pressure stages. The first two pressure stages, I'll be going for pressure compounding. That means the velocity will increase in the stator, then it's expanded in the rotor. Then the velocity will increase in the stator, then the velocity will decrease in the rotor. Then the further next two stages, what will happen? The stator in the particular thing, first stator, the velocity will increase, then the velocity get absorbed, and the third, we have the fourth, we have a stator. No, there the velocity will remain constant. That means, let me type that. Okay, what happens there? If suppose this is my, let me write that. So I do have two stages like this. One nozzle, one rotor. Then I have a nozzle, then I have a rotor, then say nozzle, rotor, nozzle, rotor. Right. So this is for, I am writing it for pressure velocity compounding. Pressure and velocity compounding. So where you have both. So this is one stage, say one maybe high pressure, then I will be having the low pressure. So what will happen to your velocity? Your velocity will enter like this, right? Then it will increase in the nozzle. So let me call it as nozzle 1, the stator 1, stator 2, stator 3. This is rotor 1, rotor 2, rotor 3. Okay, so this is also stator 1 only. Nozzle 1, so let me call this as 2. Okay, this is 2, this is 3, and this is your rotor 4. Okay, nozzle 1 or stator 1. So here what will happen? This will drop like this. Then this will increase in my stator. Then it drops this particular thing. Okay, it is not a bigger gap. So just to show that I am showing that how it goes. Then in the velocity compounding, this will increase. Then this will drop to a particular lower value. Then this will remain constant. Fine. This will almost remain constant. Then it will drop further in the rotor. Then it goes out. This is your velocity. Entry and exit. So this is how my velocity will go. What will happen to your pressure? So your pressure, it will enter at one particular thing. It enters at some value. Fine. It drops in the nozzle. Then it almost remains same. Then it drops further. Then it almost remains, drops here and almost remains same. Fine. Then it drops to a particular value. Then it almost remains same and it exits. This is your pressure at the entry. This is the pressure at the exit. So this is pressure compounding, and this will be velocity component. If both are done simultaneously, we call that as pressure velocity component combined. Okay, this is about, see, we have seen the classification, we have seen why the need for the compounding. Then we are moving ahead with the what are the different types of compounding only with respect to the pressure and velocity, how it's going to vary using the corresponding variations in the intermediate as well as the first stage of this nozzle or stator, then rotor, stator, rotor, stator, rotor, stator, rotor. If I have 3 stages, so same thing in pressure compounding. If I have 4 stages, so depending on, it may be having a 3 stage or a 4 stages. So this is how your pressure velocity compounding or pressure compounding or velocity compounding or compounding steam turbines will work. Okay. So we'll move further. We are needed to analyze the single stage steam turbines. So analysis of single stage steam turbines. Single stage steam turbines. First we look for impulse type, then we'll go for the reaction type. Okay. Impulse type, so in that let's take example of D-level turbine. Okay, the D-level turbine, my impulse turbine, the degree of reaction is equal to 0. Fine. Now, so I have a sketch here. Okay, let's look into this. This is your a simple D-level input start. Let's look into this. So if you look at this rotor, the angles, the beta angles, look at this. These are called as your beta angles or blade angles. Blade angles, beta 1 and beta 2. So beta 1 at the entry and beta 2 at the exit. It is almost like a cup shape. See, your impulse turbine of maybe a D-level type will be having the cup-shaped nozzle or cup-shaped blades or vanes. We call it a cup-shaped vanes. So if that is the condition, then my beta 1 is equal to beta 2. When I have my beta 1 and beta 2 both are same, the corresponding relative velocities also should be same. So this is the design. The design speaks in such a way that my degree of reaction R is equal to 0 and the veins are in the cup shape with the equal blade angles. Suppose if my beta 1 is equal to 30 degrees, beta 2 is also 30 degrees. If this is the case, then my VR1 is equal to VR2. This is for only this kind of D-level turbine. It's an impulse machine. Okay. Now beta, how it is drawn, all those things I have shown here. So beta 1 and beta 2 both are same. Now, if you look at it actually, why it is called as a kinetic energy or impulse type of a machine? In the rotor, my kinetic energy is absorbed. In the rotor of a this, the kinetic energy is completely absorbed. It is called as an impulse machine. Okay. So I have written the corresponding, the inlet pressure, it drops in the nozzle and it almost remains same in the rotor. So the velocity triangle, see I have drawn one type of velocity triangle. This is the kind of velocity triangle. Okay. Let me draw a velocity triangle for your, don't worry about this, was given in some textbook. I don't go by that actually. Let me draw the velocity triangle for it. A combined velocity triangle. Fine. for an impulse machine. Okay, 1 is the inlet and 2 is the exit. So 1 as inlet, 2 as exit. That's how I draw. Okay. Now, when in an axial flow machine, my u remains constant. So it is drawn with a common base. That's the meaning of it. It's drawn with a common base. So I will try to draw two types of velocity, same combined velocity triangle given in few books, and both the books will try to follow both actually. So both the things are right. So if I have a common velocity, that is u, fine, and the velocity, see, it enters, see, it enters with a velocity v1. So this is my alpha 1, and I can close it with VR1. Can close it by VR1, and if I draw the components of V1, I'll be getting this will be my VF1, and this will be my VW1, and this will be beta 1. Okay, here beta 1 and beta 2 both are same. Beta 1 and beta 2 both are same. So what will happen here? So I have to go out with the same angle, that is with beta 2, fine, and join to draw to the scale, it will come. Okay, this will be my V2, and this will be VR2, and if I close it, this will be by VF2, and VW, and this will be your alpha. So this will be your the velocity. So what will be this particular thing? This is VW2, fine. So if I try to, let's name it A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, if I try to name it, so your AD is equal to VW1 minus U, and EAF is equal to VW2 plus U, because that's very much required for us. If I take, for example, cos beta 1 or sin beta 1, fine, or cos beta 2 sin beta 2, then we'll be taking VW2 plus U or VW1 minus U. So this becomes very, very critical for beta 1 and beta 2 calculations when you're solving some of the numericals. This is one type of combined velocity triangles we do, but some of the textbooks, they try to show in this fashion. So both are fine. So I can use both actually. So you have your U like this, fine. Then your V1 will be in this direction. So with alpha 1 here, and then you have your VR1, okay, VR1, and if I try to close it with a right angle triangle here, so this will be 90, So this will be my VF1 and this will be VW1 and this will be beta. Okay, I got the inlet triangle. So similarly, if I want to write the exit triangle from beta 1, I have to draw VR2. It goes like this. So this is VR2. Then join with V2. Okay, I can close it with so this will be my VF2 and this is my VW2 and this is alpha to beta 2. So both my velocity triangles are fine. I can use both the velocity triangles for analysis. Both the velocity triangles both are fine for your steam turbines. It's a vector addition and vector subtraction is what we are looking at. I can use either this triangle or this triangle. So don't get confused. The first one is right, the second one is wrong. No, both the velocity triangles can be used, can be drawn for your steam turbine analysis. Okay. If I am going for a multi-stage, if I am going for a multi-stage turbine. So let me draw for 2 stages. Same thing can be used for 3 stages. If I go for a multi-stage, if suppose I have the first stage, it's something like this. So this is the first stage triangle. Okay, so this is my V1, VR1, VR2, V2 and U2. This is beta. So this I have my beta 1. This is my beta 1, beta 2, alpha 1, and alpha. I got my first stage. Now, this is for the first stage of your rotor or first stage of a turbine. This is for first rotor or water I have. Now, when I have the second stage, my speed remains the same. The blade speed remains, the rotation speed remains the same. But energy available will change. So what we are supposed to do? We have to project this U and put this U to be the same. This U remain the same. See, the fluid is exiting at velocity V2 first stage. Then, if there is no friction, no losses, your V2 will be equal to V3, which is entering the next stage. If there is a loss, V3 will be that percentage, maybe 10% loss means 0.9 times off. So if V2 will be is equal to V3 with no frictional losses. Otherwise, your V3 will be some CB or KB, whatever it may be, multiplied by 2 with friction, where CB is the frictional coefficient or loss coefficient. So what we have to do, we have to go to the next stage with V3 and close it. So this will be your VR3. Okay. Then you go here. This will be VR4 and goes here. This will be here V4. So this is for the second rotor. If the third stage, what should I do? I should proceed further. If there is a third stage, I should proceed further and draw the velocity triangle. What it is actually, it will be same U. Fine. In that case, your V5. So your V5 will be maybe a smaller one like this. So V5, this will be your VR5. Then this is VR6 and this will be V6. This is for third stage of the rotor. So for each stage, the velocity, see this shows the velocity triangle clearly shows as per the Euler equation. The velocity triangle clearly shows that what are the energy it is possessing in that particular rotor, or what is the energy that has been converted. So first stage I could see a bigger triangle, a velocity triangle. Second stage a little bit smaller one compared to the first one. The third stage a much. If I have 4 stages, so depending upon the availability of the energy, I can write it. So very big one or a large one, then followed by a big one, then a small one and a smaller one. So you can write so one below the other or one above the other. If I am following the first method, this method, if I am following this method, I have to write one above the other. So usually we try to follow this methodology. So one below the other. So first rotor, second rotor and third rotor. So we'll try to look into, usually we'll try to look into one particular numerical of 2 stages. So one numerical I will try to solve. So we usually will try to go to solve this